Hi, this is Georgia Purdom, and we're back today talking more about the Answers for Women conference coming up here in April, just a few months away. We're really excited about that. And our theme this year is life, contending for life from beginning to end. And I'm very pleased to have with me today my friend, Camille Cates, who is going to be one of our speakers. She is the assistant director for a ministry called Healing Hearts International, and she's a certified biblical counselor, a speaker, a co-author of a ladies' Bible study as well as a young men's Bible study that they're just about to publish. And Camille was a speaker at our 2015 Embrace conference, and so we're just so glad to have you back.
Thanks, Georgia. I'm glad to be back. Answers for Women is one of my favorite conferences because I just feel when I leave that I am really challenged and also thoroughly equipped. So I love it. I love Answers for Women.
Well, that's great, and that's our goal, is to really equip women with answers, especially for the day and age that we live in. So at Embrace, you talked about the topic of abortion, and why don't you give us just a little bit of your background on that, a little bit of your story.
Okay. My story is that I grew up in the church, and I became saved when I was 12 years old, but I really felt like I had a lack of discipleship. How do I live this Christian life after the initial salvation? So, I would just say I was a typical teen, and as I was going throughout school, high school especially, I was super boy crazy. And I had very little knowledge or upbringing on how to have a godly relationship. So that's one of the things I'm passionate about now. But that resulted in me having sexual activity at a young age at about 15. And then I had 2 teen unexpected pregnancies myself. The first one, my parents were really shocked. And I was shocked when my mom came to me and said, "Do you want to have an abortion?" And at that time I thought, I know that what I did was wrong, but I want to keep my baby. Right. And so my parents were very supportive. I'm very thankful that they were. But it was trying to figure out life as this teen mom and graduating high school as a pregnant girl, and just all the things that surround that teen years are hard enough without having a teen pregnancy in the mix. But that was part of my story. And so I had a little girl, and her name was Lauren. And then I was just kind of searching for another relationship. Her father didn't stick around. I felt like one of those teen statistics, and I really didn't know what to do with my life except search for another relationship. And not having any other knowledge or discipleship on relationships, I just jumped back into the next relationship that I could. We became sexually active very quickly, and I became pregnant again. And so this time, we really didn't know what to do, and because my situation had changed and I didn't have really good doctrine and theology, I wasn't taught well, I started to make compromising decisions. And we considered abortion, but we weren't sure. But something tragic had happened, and I'm going to make a long story short for our interview time. But one night, my boyfriend at the time was watching my daughter while I was working, and he ended up sexually assaulting and killing her. And so my world just was devastated, and I was now in a crisis pregnancy because of my situation. But God doesn't change, and His Word doesn't change. I didn't realize that at the time. I thought, I have this unique situation, and sometimes when we think our situations we're the only ones, we want to compromise on what we know to be true, and I did. And I ended up having an abortion afterwards, and then my life just spiraled downwards from there, and I just felt really lost for a few years in trying to live life with hopelessness. Right. Even though I had Christ, I didn't know what to really do with my relationship in that area, so I struggled. So that's a little bit of how I got to that point.
Right, and I think one of the things that you said that really kind of just jumped out at me was, you needed that doctrine, you needed that theology, because when the times get tough, as Christians, we're not immune to these things. We're going to face the same things. We're living in the same world as everybody else, and we're going to face those things. And so we've got to be equipped. We've got to have that doctrine and theology, so when those time comes, we know what answers to give, and we have that guiding us rather than just floundering around and then making bad decisions as a result. So,
right.
So you're speaking on abortion this year as well. So what makes this what makes this presentation different? What are we going to learn this year?
Sure. Well, at the Embrace Conference, the goal was really teaching and equipping women on how to give compassionate answers to those who have already had an abortion. So we're really looking at the post-abortive issue and how to handle that biblically and lovingly, speaking the truth in love, but also with a lot of grace. So this time, we're going to be looking at really people who are abortion-minded or pro-choice, and how we can give good, still grace-filled, truth-filled answers on how to address the issue with them in a way that they can respond to, hopefully, well, as we learn how to speak well and speak the truth in love. So that's the difference.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think that really stuck out to me from your last presentation was giving the truth, but with grace. And that's something that I think can really get lost in the abortion movement, and when we're in the sense that when we're trying to help people and trying to do good and stand up for the truth, but at the same time remember that these are real women making really difficult decisions, dealing with very difficult decisions in life, and we have to be gracious, just as Jesus would be gracious and help them.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize they're responding out of anger, and there is such a thing as righteous anger over abortion. We need to hate what God hates, and God hates taking innocent life. But at the same time, I think people are not practicing self-control with that anger, and they're responding in ways that are very harmful or negative to the culture, and they need to see the grace aspect as well as the truth. So it's really important that we learn how to do that.
Right. So, why don't you talk a little bit about Healing Hearts Ministry, because that's something that obviously greatly helped you to the point where you became a part of it. So why don't you just tell our viewers a little bit about the ministry?
Okay. Kind of picking up where my story left off, the Lord was really gracious to me. He brought a godly young man in my life that I grew up with in church just at the right time, and I began being discipled by him. He pursued me. We ended up being married. So I was married to this young youth pastor, but still had this sin of abortion in my past, and it really wreaked havoc in our marriage. I didn't realize how much abortion could affect marriage and parenting down the road. So anyway, we were at a place where I really needed help, and I so happened to end up at a women's conference, and Healing Hearts Ministries had a booth there. And I quickly grabbed some material, and I read through it, and the thing that stuck out to me the most was that they were a ministry to post-abortive women by post-abortive women, and they know that they had been there, they've walked in our shoes, and that message really gripped me, because it wasn't somebody just shouting a pro-life agenda at me saying, this is what you've done, you need to repent. It was somebody saying, we know what it's like to sin in this area. We know what it's like to be broken by your sin choices, and we want to help bring hope and healing through Jesus Christ. So I ended up going to that Bible study, getting that Bible study, going through it, and just the Word of God transformed my life and my heart, and not only healed my experience with abortion, but so many different areas of my life, and it just thoroughly equipped me and gave me a hunger for God's Word. So I've been with the ministry ever since. We've expanded since then to more of a discipleship ministry, because there are other men and women that are hurting from issues besides abortion. We have a youth curriculum, like you mentioned, because we want to equip the younger generation to have good answers when they're faced with some of these issues. So the ministry is a little bit unique in that we have two formats that we do the Bible study. Somebody can find a local trained leader and go through a group Bible study or one-on-one, or we have it online. So anyone, anywhere in the world that reads and writes English can go online and get help from a past abortion.
That's one of the things that I know always impressed me with the ministry was that it's very biblically grounded. I mean, that to me, because that's where the hope is. It's in Jesus Christ. It's in His Word, and it's not just about forgiving yourself. And that's not even a biblical concept. We need God to forgive us, and He will, and He does. And so I think that's what impressed me the most, about the ministry, coming from someone like me who has not had an abortion, but thinking, okay, why would I recommend this ministry? And I would recommend it because it's very biblically sound, and we need that so much in our culture today.
We do. So many of the materials out there, while they're trying to address the topic from a right motive, they're not getting to the heart, and they're most of the materials aren't even using the gospel. And what else do we have that gives us life and hope and change but the gospel of Christ? So we are what we call a gospel-centered, grace-driven ministry to help those who are broken by sin. And without the gospel and a relationship with Jesus Christ, it's only partial healing. It's kind of like a Band-Aid fix. So that's our motive, is to stay Christ-centered, to bring the hope of Christ to those who are hurting.
Well, one of the things I think when it comes to the issue of life here in the United States and the issue of abortion, I think it's easy for Christians to get really complacent because we think, well, it's legal. I'm one person. What can I possibly do? I mean, we know, over 50 million babies have been aborted, and we know this. We know the statistics. It's and that even those in the church around us, they're not immune to this. A lot of those women, I forget, what's the statistics on women overall having abortions?
The statistic is about 1 out of 3 women by the time they're age 45 will have had at least one abortion. And that statistic is no different from women in the secular realm than women in the church. So, I mean, think about how many women are sitting in the pews on Sunday morning hiding in secrecy and shame because they're not healed. And so it's a big problem. I just read a statistic that, let's see, we're on January 10th. This year alone, there have already been over 20,000 abortions in the U.S. We're 10 days into the new year. So that's 20,000 people in our population that are gone, and all these women that are left hurting from the effects of abortion. So we definitely need to be reaching them. I think our methods really need to change, and they need to be biblical. And where some of the messages that used to be on picket signs and billboards and bumper stickers, sometimes those have their place if they're a positive and hope-filled message, but not all of them are. And I think what's more influential in our culture is cultivating good conversations with people and being able to have listening ears and a heart of compassion that's willing to say, you know what, why do you think this issue is wrong? Because if you don't get to their heart, you can't make an appeal to their conscience and their heart with the gospel. So we have to be having those conversations to understand people, understand why they believe what they believe. So.
And that's what I think I'm really excited about this year's presentation, because you're going to be talking to us about some of those things. That even when we feel like we can't make a difference, we can make a difference in a lot of people's lives. And so I look forward to that. And Camille will have a guest blog post that we'll post tomorrow on my blog on the Answers in Genesis webpage. So you can go right to answersingenesis.org to find that, and so you can read more about that and more about her ministry. And again, the conference is April 6th through 7th, and the early bird deadline is February 1st, so it is coming up here. So I know with the holidays and everything, it can get crazy and you're not thinking about maybe what's next, but be sure to take advantage of that early bird deadline before February 1st. You can go to answersforwomen.org to find more information on that. And remember, you get free admission to the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter and 20% off for your family. So it's a really nice family adventure, so to speak, to take to come here and be able to do all of that. And I think that's all the details I needed to remember. So we're going to be back and keep watching, because over the next few weeks we'll be having more of our speakers and talking to them about what's coming up for the Answers for Women conference. So thank you, Camille.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we'll see you next time.